Hi, this is Jenny from infiniteloopknitting.com.
Did you know there are two kinds of single round stripes you can knit, helix and bullseye. They're both very good. The main thing is you do not want to combine both types of stripes in the same piece of knitting. Doing so will result in very wonky looking stripes. Therefore, it's really important to know how to do both kinds. Let's take a look first at helix knitting. I've already set up for knitting in the round. Helix knitting is easy. When you switch colors, and we're already switching colors right after the cast on round, you pick up your new color. You make sure the working yarn from your old color is going off to the right, and then you pick up your new color. And what you will do is you'll hold the tail in your right hand and then go ahead and knit the first stitch. And then you will knit the rest of the stitches for the round. All right, I've knitted the first round and I'm ready to start up again with the white. The key to helix knitting is to never cross your yarn in front of your working yarn. Always make sure that the old yarn is off to the right. And that's the only trick for helix knitting that you need to know. That and to change your yarn every round. And now we just continue with the new color. I've finished knitting this round, and again all I need to do is drop the color I am working with, move it off to the right, and then pick up my new color. So that's the correct way to pick up your new color. What you don't want to do is sandwich the old color between your work and the new color. So this is incorrect. Get rid of that old yarn and move it off to the right, and then pick up your new color. And then you're ready to begin knitting again. Knit another round. I've finished knitting several rounds, and you can see we've got some very nice stripes going here. The interesting thing about helix stripes is that technically we only have two stripes here, one white stripe and one blue stripe. If I follow the blue stripe all the way around, you'll see that it automatically becomes the second blue stripe. It's actually a spiral going around the work. And the same thing's going on with the white stripe. The other thing I like about helix stripes is noticeable from the inside. It's very clean. There are no carries up the back of the work. The other type of stripe we can knit are bullseye stripes, and these are true stripes. They have a beginning and an end. You can think of them as rings stacked on top of each other. And that means somehow when we're knitting the stripe, we need to do a join so that the last stitch is joined properly to the first stitch. And the way we do this is a little odd because technically it's not even a join. So here's the old color, and we're going to join it simply by moving it from right to left and then bringing up the new color. And what this does is it traps the old color beneath the new color and hugs it up close to the first stitch of the round. So the last stitch is sort of being joined to the first stitch. Close enough for it to look good anyhow. So I'm going to go ahead and then knit a stitch. Now you'll notice right here that my yarn is not trapped. So I did it wrong. So let's back off with that and try again. So we're hugging the yarn next to the work, and then we're making a sandwich. We've got the work, we've got the old yarn, and then we have the new yarn coming up behind it, and then we'll knit a stitch. And this time you'll see the blue yarn is trapped behind the white yarn. Okay, and that is as close to a join as we're going to get. Now you'll also notice I'm transitioning between helix stripes and bullseye stripes. We're going to have some ugliness as a result of that, because as I mentioned earlier, you don't want to mix the two types of stripes. That will straighten out after a few rounds, and normally you would just be knitting one type or the other, so it's not going to be an issue for you. But at least we get a chance to look at what happens when you transition between the two types of stripes. And now all I have to do is knit all the way around. I've finished knitting my round, and it's time to switch colors again. The first thing I want to do is make sure that the old color, that the stitches are all even on the old row. So I'll just snug that up, and then I made it too tight, so now I'll loosen it up a bit. Get that stitch exactly the way you'd like it, because as soon as you start knitting with the new color, you're not going to really have a chance to make any adjustments. So again, we need to join that white round to itself, and we'll do that by moving the old color across from the last stitch to the first stitch. And then we'll bring up the new color and we'll knit a stitch with that. Then we'll check on the back of the work to make sure the old color is trapped beneath the new color. And it does appear to be so. So now we can continue knitting. All right, we've finished knitting the round, and now it's time to switch colors again. Before we do that, we're going to adjust the last stitch on the previous round just to get the sizing right. This is our last chance to do that, so it's important to get it right. Then for the round we just knitted, we want to make sure that it's joined. So we will take the old yarn and bring it across the knitting, last stitch married to first stitch, and then we'll bring up the new yarn. I'll try knitting right-handed and we'll see what happens. Yarn around. I do not like knitting right-handed, but if that works for you, that's great. You can see the yarn is trapped. The old yarn is trapped beneath the new yarn, so that was a successful join. And now we can continue knitting, and we'll see what we get after we finish knitting several rounds. All right, I've finished knitting my stripes. You can see we've got my bullseye stripes lining up very horizontal and even. And then below that we have the helix stripes, which you can see a little bit of the helix effect here, just a little bit of a slant. That's due to the narrowness of the piece I've knitted. If this were, say, a sweater, you would not have picked up on that slant at all. But as the piece narrows, the spiral effect, the helix effect, becomes much more noticeable. You can use this to good effect and work a series of evenly spaced decreases, say at the top of a hat, to create a nice spiral pattern. The bullseye stripes will always be straight across. If you're working a series of decreases at the top of a hat, you'll get a bullseye pattern rather than a spiral pattern. Both of them are quite nice. It really depends on what you're trying to achieve. For the bullseye stripes on the inside, you can see we've got this seam almost, this carry of the yarn up the back. One of the things I didn't mention earlier in the video is that it's very important to keep the carried yarn loose. Otherwise you will wind up with some tight stitches, and that may affect the front of the work. And so those are the two styles of single row stripes that you can knit. They're both equally effective. It really depends on what you want to achieve with your knitting. I will say the helix stripes are a little bit easier for beginners to knit because you don't have to worry about the tensioning and the carrying up of the yarn. But other than that, they both work out equally well.